Welcome back to the Talking Archive. I'm Josh Jacobs, and our conversation concludes now with radio personality and actor Tony Scott. Now, when you worked for Westwood One, I remember going there a couple of times myself. One time with Gary Hurricane Allen Belsman, and then another time, a couple times with Benny Martinez. And I'm not sure if it was this way with the channel you worked on, where you always had to time it out, where the song at the end of the hour had to end by 59:50 in order to play a 10-second legal ID dummy cart to get into the next hour. Was it that way with you too?
What a memory you have.
I just remember the dummy legal ID.
I know you're not BSing. I know you're not BSing, because that's exactly what it was. We had these little timers, and we had to back time, and oh my God, there could be some train wrecks. You know, the last thing you wanted was a cold ending song, your last song of the hour.
Oh yeah,
because then it had to be perfect. I mean, it had to be. There was a 10-second legal ID, right, at 50:50 or 59:50, and right to the top of the hour, and your next hour began. But I will say this. Those were the days of live radio, my favorite radio. To me, real radio.
Mm-hmm.
You can't beat that.
No, you can't.
I am so glad that most of my career I got to do live radio. I feel sorry for people in radio now who never knew what it was like to fly by the seat of your pants and switch out songs and take calls and do features and do contests, live interaction with listeners. That, for the most part, is gone. And that's sad.
It is. I mean, I remember watching videos also, or even hanging out when I was interning about 30 years ago with Machine Gun Kelly, Benny Martinez, Hurricane Allen, even got to sit in with Charlie Tuna a couple of times. It was just great, pulling carts for them, getting them coffee or water, pulling the commercials, pulling the jingles for them. Even a couple times, Hurricane let me do a couple segues, from one song to jingle to the next song. It was just like, it was this rush. Like you couldn't even, it was awesome. And one time I was actually doing a practice show in the studio next door, and I could see MG through the glass. And so one day he's waving his arms like crazy. It's like, he hits the intercom. You're live on the air right now. It's like, ah. So I'm like, hi, LA, it's Josh. And then I'm just like panicking for like 30 seconds, like, just kidding, you're not on the air. I'm like, whew.
Oh, you had me too. I thought you were somehow. Whoa. Yeah. There was just, Westwood One, but back at its absolute zenith, we were live around the world. I mean, we were on American Forces Network all over the world. You'd crack that microphone, and you'd know that you were being heard everywhere. Well, not everywhere, but you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah.
Many countries, over 100 countries, and across the U.S., and we had some pretty big markets at one time. It was a real jazz to work for Westwood One back in the day.
I'll bet. I mean, yeah, go ahead.
But I was going to say, I understand business and how business works, and you're going to cost cut, and you're going to do it to make your business profitable, and in came tracking, and I get it. I do. But it's sad to say goodbye to that live radio stuff.
Oh, yeah. And right now you're working, I noticed that you work at, or maybe worked at 95.7 The Ride in Charlotte, North Carolina. Is that a current gig, or is that one from the past as well?
No, that's current. I still do afternoons on The Ride.
Mm-hmm.
And I still do a feature for the American Forces Network. I do that 6 days a week. It's kind of a rock report type thing. And I've got a few other clients I do VO for.
That's great. And what's your website so people can check it out if they'd like to use your pay for your services, if you will, or purchase your services for voiceover?
That is currently under construction.
Okay.
I'm redoing it. But if anybody wanted to reach out, they can just hit me on Facebook at Tony Scott Radio.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
And also, I noticed you were also on 100.1, the Quake in the High Desert. Did you actually live out there in the desert, or did you do it remotely as far as the voice tracks were concerned?
Well, that was one of our affiliates on Westwood One.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the Quake.
Yeah, the Quake.
And interesting that the Quake, the tower's in Tehachapi. My house was in Tehachapi. I lived up there full time. I actually had a house for 17 years up there in Tehachapi. But the 2 years before I moved back to Ohio, I moved back here in 2021. The last 2 years I was there full time. So to be living in Tehachapi and working for the Quake, and I could listen to myself up there, it was crazy. It was a good time.
That's great.
I believe the Quake is still with Westwood One.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now, you, I had a question, actually, when you lived in Taiwan. What was your favorite place to visit in Taiwan? Because you lived there for many, many years as you're with the American Forces Radio Network.
Well, most of it was in high school. So, right after high school. Favorite place to visit? I mean, we had great places we would go. There were sulfur baths, up in the mountains there. There were caves that we would hike through, and there was just lots of great food. Some of the back alleys and the night markets, they just always had great food going right there on the street. That was always a lot of fun.
Wow. Any particular dishes stand out to you?
Wow, so many. They do a lot of noodles. They do, pork and garlic and chicken and beef and all the. You know how it is. They get those woks going. And there were some things I was not into. They used to have carts they would push with deep fried chicken feet hanging off. It looked like clothesline with deep fried chicken feet. And no thanks, no. And there were entrails, and deep fried intestines and things. Asia can have, some interesting food. I try to be adventurous, but some of it I have to pass on.
Yeah. I probably have passed too on intestines and chicken feet.
I'll tell you a quick story. After I graduated high school at Taipei American School, I moved back stateside. I got into radio back stateside. My parents and sisters went on to Hong Kong, and they were posted there for a few years. And my parents went out to eat one night. They went to a banquet, and they're sipping soup. And my mother's, biting down on things that are popping in her mouth. She's like, that's interesting. Well, what in the world is that? And my dad goes, yeah, I taste them too. They're popping in my mouth. And an eyeball floated up in the soup. It was chicken eyeball soup.
Oh.
Pushed the bowl away. I said, why'd you push the bowl away? You thought it was delicious until you were stared at by the soup.
Oh, gosh.
Yum.
Yeah. There's actually a Taiwanese restaurant in San Gabriel that I went to. It's called Why Thirsty. It's really good food, but I don't remember seeing any eyeballs on the menu there.
That might be a Cantonese thing. I don't know. But very little of a chicken is wasted in that part of the world.
Wow.
They use it all.
Wow. And let me ask you, what was the best piece of advice you've ever gotten?
What was the best piece of advice? Know where you're going on the air.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you can hear. I think it's probably less now with things being tracked and people can just re-record again.
Mm-hmm.
But from time to time, you can hear people not really know where they're going in a break. They just sort of crack the microphone. Maybe they were distracted right up until the time they cracked the microphone. I always tried to be ready, to know where I was going. And I was always taught one thought per break, self-edit, keep it moving. What else? You got all these questions, Josh. I have to dig into my memory banks. I was lucky. Let me just say that I was really lucky that from very young I got to work with the best in the business. I mean, beginning with WPGC, which was a huge, huge station. It was sort of DC's Kiss FM. You know, every market had their big, big top 40 station. And everyone at that station was a star. I'm not talking about me. I was just a 19-year-old part-timer.
Mm-hmm.
But every station I moved on to, I worked with really legendary people. You know, Kiss and K-Earth and KLOS and The Sound and some of these other markets where I got to work with big people. And I learned from every single one of them. So I'll always remember that and always appreciate everyone I worked with.
That's great.
Yeah.
And they're too numerous to mention, as the old saying goes, right?
Yeah, if I were to start mentioning, I would leave a few out. And then I'd go, you know, you and I would hang up and I'd go, oh, man, I forgot them. But, you know, just think of KLOS and K-Earth and Kiss FM. We talked about Rick Dees,
mm-hmm.
Rita Wilde.
And K-Earth had Brian Byrne, Mr. Rock and Roll, who I got to interview a couple months ago. And
oh, did you? Where's he at now?
He's in Orange County, and he's doing well. He was hosting the Glendale Cruise Night about a month ago and introduced 3 different cover bands. One was Ticket to Ride, which was a Beatle tribute band. He introduced another artist named Greg Wolf, who is a Rod Stewart tribute artist. He said that he and Greg had dinner a couple weeks before that, and people were coming up to the table saying, Rod Stewart, we love you. Can we have your autograph? He's like, and I'm sorry, I'm not Rod Stewart. Oh, you're Rod Stewart. Give me your autograph. And they're like, okay. So he started signing autographs as Rod Stewart because people thought he really was Rod. But yeah, and then they also had a Rolling Stones tribute artist there as well. So he's still doing the oldies concert venue, and so he's doing well. Has a couple grandchildren, and yeah.
Yeah, I worked with him for 4 years. And Jay Coffey.
Jay Coffey, that's right, your guy, Jay Coffey.
Yeah, he did evenings,
mm-hmm.
and I worked with him at Westwood One up until 6 weeks ago. I left Westwood One 6 weeks ago. I think we talked about at the beginning, maybe before you rolled tape, that it just got to be too much. It got to be too much on the plate, and trying to help out my folks. My mother is way up there, and this way I don't have to be locked in place every day, because Westwood One was almost live. It was every day, Monday through Saturday. So it freed up some time.
Oh, yeah.
Well, but I certainly owe them a huge debt of gratitude, Westwood One. They employed me longer than anyone, and I'll forever be grateful to them.
That's a good place. I actually worked there part-time, gathering sports clips and sometimes call screening for different live shows, like Rich Valdez on occasion, and every once in a blue moon, Mark Levin, and then do the sports highlights for the NCAA football and NFL teams, and then also college basketball. So it's a great place to work. Howie Deneroff is my immediate boss there, and so that's a good place. And then Jack Silver also was my boss when NBC Sports Radio was operating out of there. Unfortunately, it closed down about 4 years ago.
Right.
Although we were kind of lucky because as board operators, they still had sports updates at the top and bottom of the hour. And so on the weekend, it got to be where I'm just, responsible for bringing up the sports cast, and that was pretty much it. In between, I could just, sit and read or, do some of my own production. And so I did that for about a year and a half without any live shows, which was kind of weird, but, it helped me do some stuff I'd been wanting to do. And so it was a good place to work.
It was a great place to work, and a lot of good people there. And Culver City, I mean, the history of those two buildings, they're right across the street from each other.
Mm-hmm.
You can go way back. Wasn't Pirate Radio there for a while when Scott Shannon first
That's
came
right.
to LA? They moved it down there.
Mm-hmm.
Metro Traffic. many stations.
Yeah, I remember Pirate Radio very well when it came out, and they said Shannon in the morning. I was not sure who that was. I didn't realize he was a big superstar out on the East Coast, and still is, having most recently been at Oldies 101.1 WCBS FM.
Right. I worked for him at WPGC. He programmed it for a while.
That's right, yeah. How was that? Tell us your memories of Scott.
Scott was interesting. Scott was, a brilliant programmer. Obviously, I'll never forget From Worst to First. Was that what was the station in New York? Worst to First, Z100.
That's right.
Z100, and he took that station. I mean, they just took over New York. Yeah, he certainly is a pro. He knows what he's doing. A lot of fun to work with.
That's great.
Steve Kingston, worked with him at PGC. I think he took over for Scott Shannon, as a matter of fact. Of course, he has New York ties, too.
Wow. That's great. Well, Tony, it's been great talking with you. Is there anything you'd like to add to complete the interview?
Thank you. That's what I want to add. Thank you for thinking of me and letting me talk way too much. I hope I didn't talk way too much.
Hey,
I feel like I did.
The less I talk and the more my interviewee talks, the better. So,
okay. Josh, thank you so much for having me onto your program.
You've been listening to the Talking Archive. I'm Josh Jacobs, and we've been talking with Tony Scott, radio personality and actor. Also, follow us right now on Instagram at JoshDJ57. That's JoshDJ57. It's a 5 and a 7. It's not spelled out, just to let you know. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'd love to have more subscribers. Tell your friends about us. If you have an idea for an interview, or if you'd like to be interviewed, if you're a radio personality, just email me, joshdj57@gmail.com. That's joshdj57@gmail.com. Until next time, keep your mind on the things above, and as you hit that open road, don't be a slowdown spectator.